Welcome to Bear Era. It is draft season, and we know you've got questions you want answered, so we're going to provide them. Today, we've got ESPN's own Matt Miller here to answer questions about the draft, and I don't want to waste any time, so let's get right to it. Got a great one for you today, Bears fans. It's draft season. We know you have questions. We have answers, but we don't have all the answers. So we did pull in somebody who does. It's Matt Miller, ESPN's national draft analyst. Matt, how are you today?
Doing well. Appreciate you guys having me on to talk a little Chicago Bears. I was just in Chicago. Should have some information while I was there. I didn't. I ate a lot of really good food, but it'll be fun to talk some draft.
Yeah, Bears have put themselves in a different position than they were in the beginning of this offseason. We will talk about that quite a bit, all the moves they've made, and basically how you see how that shapes up their draft strategy. But we're going to get right into it. We want to use your time well. We know it is an incredibly busy time of year for anybody that deals with the draft. So Ciaran's going to kick it off. We've got about 3 questions each and maybe a little bit of a lightning round at the end. We'll see.
Yeah, I think if we were talking about this maybe 5-6 weeks ago, I would have been just talking O-line, O-line, O-line. But
Yeah.
with that being said on what the Bears did, there's been a big conversation amongst a lot of fans of the positional value at 10 versus the overall talent. Because when we look at the overall talent that could be there at 10, maybe it's not those positions that fans like to say is the most important, the likes of the edge rusher, the offensive tackle, for example. Obviously, we hear about guys like Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren. In your opinion, when you get to a point of where the Bears are at 10, where they have kind of a wide open option here because of what they did in free agency and through trades, where do you sit in that should you put the positional versus or value ahead of the actual talent, or is it you're picking in the top 10, you always have to go talent no matter what the position is?
Man, that is a great question. I love the depth of that. So I would say it's like for different teams, it's gonna be a different answer, right? But let's like hyper focus on the Chicago Bears. I think this is a team that because of what Ryan Poles did in free agency, that you can ignore positional value to some degree. Now, like I wouldn't say draft a kicker at 10, right? And that's not a shot at them taking a punter in the 4th round last year, I
It
promise.
should
But
be.
We welcome
right.
those. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I do think though that like where they've checked boxes, you can to some degree ignore positional value. Yeah, and by that I mean, the positions that we traditionally don't think of as valuable in the 1st round: running back, tight end, center, safety. Those are the spots where it's rare to see a guy in the, hey, they have a 1st round grade. It does happen, obviously, but it's not positions that are super pumped up in the draft because of how valuable the positions are. So I think the cool thing about where the Bears are at right now is every position but quarterback is a possibility at 10. And you mentioned it. It could be, and I think we could go position by position. Ryan Poles was just at the Texas Pro Day, right? So he's at Texas Pro Day. We'll use that as an example. They could be looking at Kelvin Banks at left tackle. They could be looking at Hayden Connor at center, at guard, excuse me, Jake Majors at center, Gunnar Helm at tight end, Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond at wide receiver, Jaden Blue at running back. That's just on offense, right? And then there's the guys on defense. So I think the great thing about where the Bears are at is everything is a possibility. So to answer your question, Ciaran, I think it's best player available is the way that I would go here because you aren't reaching. And I think a big part of the conversation that Poles and his crew are having right now is how do we feel about Braxton Jones? Braxton Jones has been slightly above replacement level as a left tackle, but at 5th round pick money. So it's a value where he's at right now and how well he has played. I know last year was a bit bumpy, but previously how well he's played. And so I think that is a big, big question for this team. Like Ashton Genty, we know he's a stud. Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, they're awesome. But if you're the Bears, I think question number 1 is, are we going to offer a contract extension to Braxton Jones? Because if not, then I think guys like Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell and Armand Membo become much more interesting and guys that you have to do a lot more of a deep dive on because there's a good shot all 3 could be there at 10, or certainly 2 of the 3 could be there at 10. So I think that's what I'm trying to watch right now and trying to get intel on. And I don't think Poles will just come out and tell me, even if I asked him. It's like, okay, what is the feeling surrounding Braxton Jones? And even to that degree, how does Ben Johnson feel about Braxton Jones? Does he and his new staff, how do they feel? Because I think that's where this gets interesting. Is normally I would say, hey, you're picking 10, you don't have a lot of clear-cut needs. That's best player available territory. Just go get another good football player, right? Because you're turning the roster. But I think where that does get a little bit spicy is with the left tackle conversation.
Yeah, we've had that very same conversation because if Braxton Jones stays healthy, plays well this year, he is looking at roughly $24 million a year next year. That's the kind of money you're going to have to commit to keep him with all the free agency money we just saw to go to left tackle. So it is the one big question about, okay, if we are going to talk about positional value, it's tackle. With that, I'm going to take you to a two-part question. The first one is, who's one player that you think it's likely they could select that would leave you wanting a little bit more, that would let you feel like they left something on the bone? And the second part is, who's a player that they are unlikely to select right now that you'd be kind of surprised, thrilled with?
Oh my gosh, EJ, you guys are coming out with the hard questions tonight,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So
This isn't the easy show. This is the hard show.
the player, if they drafted Tet McMillan at 10, which I don't think is a huge possibility, but if they drafted Tet, I would be like, it's not my favorite pick, right? Because I think Rome is your X moving forward. Like that's your guy, and you have DJ Moore. And I'm learning that I'm lower on Tet McMillan than the consensus or than our peers in the draft space. And I like him. I just don't love him. And so at 10, I would be like, I'm not a huge fan of that. But I could also see it. I could see with Ben Johnson coming in with, hey, let's give Caleb all the guys we can give him. One thing we don't have is a 6'4", 215-pound former volleyball player that we can just throw the damn ball up to, right? It's like there's some value in a guy like that. But I think I would be critical of that pick because there's just so many other players. As far as someone like likely, I do worry, and I'm from Missouri. I'm a big fan of Coach Drinkwitz and the program up there, but Armand Membo would give me pause at 10. He really would. And I think that's one of those guys that is like, it's possible at least, but there would be pause for me because he's never played left tackle. He's been a right tackle from the jump. I talked to Coach Drink at the pro day a week ago. So do you think Armand could play left tackle? Of course he said, yeah, no problem, right? Because that's what he's supposed to say. But he didn't. And their left tackle, Marcus Bryant, was a good, not great player. So I think that's one of the questions I have about Membo. And in that offensive line conversation is, where does he play? Because anyone who's going to say, we're just going to move him, jump him straight from right tackle to left tackle without ever seeing it, that would give me some pause. I know Talise Fuaga did that this past year. He went from a right tackle to Oregon State, left tackle to the Saints. Decent first season reviews, but I think for Chicago, and the reality is Membo wouldn't see the field week one at left tackle because you have Braxton Jones, so it's almost like a red shirt pick, which would make me like it even probably a little bit less because you're not just playing these guys at left guard for a year so that they can get their feet wet. They're sitting on the bench for a year. It's the Olufashanu Jets pick, which is like good player, right? But like, okay, that's kind of a weird pick for a team that's trying to contend. I would feel the same way about Membu. I think like more and more with the Bears, I want Ashton Genty there badly. And if he's not there, take one of the tight ends. And I like Cole Kmet, right? Like I think one of the tight ends would be so much fun when you can run 12 personnel and go get it. I'm not a huge fan of the pass rush group outside of Abdul Carter. Like I think at 10, I would probably poke a hole in any player they took at that spot. It just feels a little bit too early when you have 2 picks in round 2, where I think you could get some pretty good value. So I know with my 7-round mock draft, Bears fans were like, what? No defensive ends? Like, I mean, I understand that it sucks. Like I wanted to give you one. It didn't work out that way with the way that I kind of approached the needs through that draft.
That is perfect for what my second question was to you, because I completely agree. Because in our last show, we spoke about defensive ends at 10, and I think we both came to the consensus there's not really one that we like at that position. But with that being said, it is still a pretty substantial need. I know that the Bears signed Dio Adengbo in free agency, and it'll be interesting to see how he incorporates into that defense. But where do you think the sweet spot is for defensive end if the Bears do go in that direction? Because again, I agree with you. I don't love any of the options that are going to be there in the first round for the Bears, with Abdul Carter likely going in the top 3 or 4 picks. After that, there's really there's no consensus on really who's going to be next. So where do you think the sweet spot would be for the Bears if they decide that they need to get somebody in the draft.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I love Jalen Walker from Georgia. I still don't think he's a fit for the Bears. So folks are going to hear this and they're going to look at my rankings and be like, "Wait, you have Jalen Walker as your 5th overall player? Why aren't we talking about?" I still don't think he's a fit for this defense. So we'll take him out of the mix here. I think the sweet spot is with one of those second round picks if they're going to prioritize it. And I'm a big fan of Deo. I think he was an ascending guy in Indianapolis. Like, we started to see what he was going to be, and he just hit free agency at the right time. So I'm a believer that between he and Montez Sweat, you have a really good group of frontline pass rushers. But for the folks who disagree with that, I think early round two. Donovan Ezraku could potentially be there from Boston College. Landon Jackson from Arkansas is a player I really like. I think he'll be there. This is like Nick Scorton territory, Texas A&M. I maintain that James Pierce from Tennessee is going to fall in the draft because of off-field and football character stuff. So he could be certainly a play with one of those spots. You got the 2 dudes from Ohio State who are really, really good players. Princely Uman from Ole Miss is right in that range. Like, the list goes on. I feel like I'm just screaming names at you guys, but there's so many round 2 pass rushers that I think are in play there. That's where I would look at the position and say, okay, if I'm reading the room wrong and they still feel like, hey, we need to get a pass rusher in the top 75 picks, I think you could get it with either one of those second round picks. You're getting a really good player.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there is a wide range of players that not only are going to be available at that point in the draft, but are also good fits for, like you said, Dennis Allen's defense, because not all the edge rushers in this draft are, and there's some really good ones there. You named a bunch of them. Braden Swinson's another guy I think fits really well.
I like both LSU guys. Those are like my round 3 like darlings, but yeah, there's so much good D-line play this year.
Yeah, I think so. Bears fans, we've been preaching patience. We're going to continue to preach patience. Whatever happens with pick number 10, wait until 39 and 41 go off the board before you get really, really mad, because it is a package deal. I realize that means waiting 24 hours, which we're all not very good at, but go ahead and do it. Outside of running back and defensive tackle, which are 2 of the most stacked position groups in this entire draft, and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of people saying this is a bad draft. This is a different draft, and it is certainly not top heavy at the sexy positions, but I don't think of it as bad. And maybe that's just because I, like you, am addicted to the draft, and I always want to try and look at the game theory and see how to solve this, right? Where are the sweet spots? So given that, do you think there's a position group in this draft that offers better value on day 3 than people are giving it credit for? Because it's one of those things, we keep talking about this wide middle, and the draft stretches out and the grades are going to be very similar. What's one position outside of running back or DT where you think there's going to be some day 3 studs?
Man, I think safety. I like a lot of those guys. I was like, do I want to say wide receiver? No, I want to say safety. I think the safety group day 3 is going to be fantastic. Lathan Ransom from Ohio State probably goes top 100, so he's right in that range. But Malachi Moore from Alabama is super versatile. He can play 3 positions on the back end. Jalen Reed from Penn State is a stud strong safety. I'm very curious to see where Billy Bowman goes, because I get mixed reviews on him because he's undersized, but he's a baller. Jonas Sanker from Virginia had a really good pre-draft. Craig Woodson from Cal is absolute monster as a hitter. I think Sebastian Castro from Iowa, who's going to be like a nickel safety type guy, he's going to go in that range. So, and I like safety is one of my favorite positions to scout. I feel like I'm really hard on those guys. So I might even be around later on some of these guys than other folks in our industry are. But I like this safety class. And even in the first round, Nicky Memori, Malachi Starks, they're dudes. I love them. But every time I watch more safeties, I feel like I'm moving them up every time I watch them, because it's such a fun group. And I liked them at the Shrine, and I liked them at the Senior Bowl, and I liked them at the Combine. And now that I'm really trying to wrap up film study to get, to day 3 of the draft, like, I just like so many of these safeties.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was waiting during your Texas recap for you to talk about Drew Makuba, because I'm trying to manifest Drew Makuba to the Bears, and it was confirmed that he is one of their 30 visits, which I'm very happy about, that they're going to get enough close.
If anyone in the draft world loves Texas more than me, it's Ryan Poles, because Roshan Johnson, like, I feel like he's always in on Texas guys, and Brett Veach as well. If you spend any time in Kansas City, somehow you end up a Texas Longhorn fan, apparently
so.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one this year, because obviously Bears fans are not used to offensive football. You get Ben Johnson in here, and then the question becomes, okay, we need to get the players that are going to suit his system, both in terms of how they play stylistically, but also what they are like off the field, right? Like, do they have the right mentality to be in his offense? Because everybody sees him as this creative coach, but don't actually see the intensity that he has and what he wants to instill on his offense. So with that being said, and I know you mentioned Ashton Genty, and we've kind of come to that as well, where maybe initially I was always of the opinion that I don't love taking running backs in the first round. But then when you start to kind of dig into this particular draft class, I'm like, at 10, there's not many other players that I would want ahead of him or Tyler Warren at that point. So with that being said, what players within this draft class, it can be first round or later on, that you think would be a very good kind of fit for a Ben Johnson style of offense?
Yeah, Ashton Genty is the obvious one, right? And I know Tyler Warren dominates the tight end conversation, but I think Colston Loveland is Sam Laporta all over again. And so it's like I've seen how well that works in that offense. And I'm with you guys. I can't wait to see how much of Ben Johnson's offense was the way it was in Detroit, because that's what he had to work with versus that's what he wants to do, right? So like we're gonna learn that, I think, over the first half of the season, certainly, and we'll get some ideas about what the personnel is going to look like moving forward. And I promise this is not just a Texas Longhorns podcast, but I think Jaden Blue is your value Jahmyr Gibbs in this draft because of the explosiveness, because the receiving ability, the different things he can do for you. You can put him in the slot a little bit. I mean, just find your mismatch. He ran a 4.28 at the Texas Pro Day, which I know you got to adjust for that a little bit, but he's an explosive runner who also had like 73% of his yards came after first contact, more than Ashton Genty, a higher percentage actually of his yards came after first contact. So he's a really dynamic runner. I think he would be a fantastic fit in this offense. If you had to go a little bit deeper, Gavin Bartholomew, the tight end from Pitt. Like if you don't go tight end round one, you're like, all right, well, we need a tight end. Watching Gavin Bartholomew at the Senior Bowl, I was like, man, this guy, he looks like a Ben Johnson tight end. And he had a great week down there in a group of really good tight ends. So he is someone I've kind of flagged as a round 4, round 5. If he happens to be there and they don't go tight end early, I think he would just be a really fun fit.
I love that. A little bit of a deep dig. That's why we have you on, Matt. We appreciate everything that you bring, not only to our podcast, but certainly to the draft space in general with your work at ESPN. And you've been a friend of me in this business since I got started, which I deeply appreciate. So thank you so much for taking time during a busy season. We really appreciate it. And we will see you around. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out because, as you said, we don't know what Ben Johnson is going to be since he's the head guy. Right. And I think it's going to be fascinating. So it's going to be a very interesting draft. I know you're going to be busy. I know a lot of our fans are going to be watching your work for sure, but thanks for taking time, being here with us today and sharing wisdom. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. It's always fun.
It was awesome to have Matt here today. I think he put his finger on a lot of questions that Bears fans are asking about what the value is at 10. Are we going to get a pass rusher? Can we have a running back? Yeah, we can have all those things, Bears fans. We'll see how it shakes out. But thanks to Matt for spending time with us in a very busy time of year. And thanks very much to our primary partners. We could not do this alone. Blue Wire Podcasts and, of course, Homage Clothing. If you need any new Bears gear to get ready for the draft, head over to Homage, use the QR code on screen. We get a cut of anything you purchase. One of the best ways to support the show. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. We are almost to 1,000 subscribers. We're going to be doing a live stream as a celebration when we hit that mark and giving away some free stuff from Homage and New Era. So be sure to tune in for that. Subscribe if you haven't. But in the meantime, keep watching, keep listening, keep hitting that like button, and we will see you very, very soon.